Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday, November 23rd edition for StudentLoanJustice.org. My name is Alan Collins. We are the oldest, largest, and pretty much only true citizens grassroots group fighting for student loan justice. For the first 15 years of our existence, we were fighting very moderately only for the return of bankruptcy protections to student loans. But this is now a catastrophically failed lending system. Catastrophically failed. And it may be too late to return bankruptcy protections to student loans. At this point, returning bankruptcy would probably only ensure that 25 million people or more would be compelled to file for bankruptcy. And I'm sorry, folks, but I think we're a little bit better country than that. And at this point, particularly during the pandemic, when we need economic stimulus and we are throwing trillions out to the country, including loans, PPP loans, that don't need to be paid back and that all add to the national debt, it is time to cancel these loans. Now, Congress really can't cancel loans. I mean, they can pass legislation that raises money to cancel student loans, but that is just not going to happen. And even if it did happen, the Department of Education, which has the unelected bureaucrats, lobbyists, lawyers, and others who have come to take charge of the Department of Education, they have no desire of actually canceling any loans. So Congress really is pretty much weak and unwilling, unable to cancel loans. The president has all the executive authority to cancel loans by executive order without needing to raise one dime in taxes. In other words, without any congressional appropriation or approval from Congress, and more importantly to many people, without adding anything to the national debt. The Secretary and the President have had this power for many years. They have exercised it from time to time in various capacities. But this could indeed happen, and this group, started a petition on change.org in March calling for exactly that. And I'm very glad to tell you that it has really caught fire. The petition now has like 833,000 signatures on it. And that's growing really quickly as we speak, by the way. So thanks to everybody out there. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments, throw them out. We're very happy to respond in situ as things come up. So I've got a couple of announcements here. First announcement, I made a post. This is sort of a retraction, folks. It's not really a retraction, but this morning I put out an old article from the Wall Street Journal. It was like over a year old, that sort of laid the groundwork for the federal government selling off, in other words, the president selling off the federal loan portfolio to Wall Street. And that is a very real concern that we have. In fact, I would not put it past the current president, or any president for that matter, but certainly the current one. Because if you read that Wall Street Journal article, you will see that they are keenly interested in selling all federal loans to the private government, to the private industry, to Wall Street, etc. It's a very real concern, folks, but it is not an imminent threat like the post that I made in the wee hours of the morning would have you believe. So I actually took down that post because I don't want to unduly alarm anyone. It probably doesn't qualify for an actual retraction. There's nothing in fact there that was wrong, but the president there's no good evidence to suggest that the president and his people are going to sell off the federal loan portfolio. There's no new information. There's no breaking news to that end. So if you woke up and you saw that news and you freaked out, sorry, we didn't mean to do that. And by the way, in the 16-year history of this organization, I think that's like the second or maybe third retraction we've ever done. So we're pretty good, but you know, sometimes people send me articles that I just read thinking that they're current, but they're not current. So So just to wrap that up in a bow, we are very worried that either this president or the next president is going to pull the rug out from under us and sell these loans off to Wall Street. That's a very dangerous thing. It would be very bad because then the president would not be able to cancel them by executive order. It would be completely taken out of the federal program. And that would essentially leave us very vulnerable to the Wall Street snakes, bloodsuckers, and others. But anyways, there was kind of much ado about nothing, so don't worry about it. We are very wary and vigilant that might happen, but for now, it looks like we're going to be okay. Second announcement, we made a town hall last week with Matt Taibbi, Rolling Stone Magazine, Catherine Nelson Fitz, former board member of Sallie Mae. And if you look on our group, you can see it linked somewhere up there somewhere. Very powerful town hall. I urge you all to check it out. And I urge you all to make a donation to support the film that town hall was made to talk about. So in other words, we're making a film. It's a very strong film. Films are expensive, it turns out. We need to raise some money to help pay for the production costs and so on and so forth. So if you go to Scared to Debt Movie, so scaredtodebtmovie.com, you can donate there and check out the trailer and see if I'm wrong. I mean, this is a freaking strong movie. It was a freaking strong town hall that we did last Friday as well. You should really enjoy that. Yeah. So tonight, folks, the most important thing that's going on right now is that our petition has caught fire. We're getting close to 1 million signatures. Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer adopted this concept of canceling student loans by executive order, like about 8 weeks ago, 2 months, month and a half, 2 months ago. So we're thrilled about that. But right now, as we speak, student loan cancellation by executive order has become, at least in the student loan universe, a household name. It's like the #1 topic that we're seeing in the media everywhere. And the bad guys, the defenders of the lending system, are coming out in droves. We have obviously touched a nerve, folks. And really, the disguises are coming off of the bad guys. You know, there's a lot of people who have been sitting in the background, many of them like Pew, like the Brookings Institute. They have claimed to be fighting for the borrowers for many years. But as soon as you start talking about canceling student loans by executive order, the swamp, the student loan defenders, they really freak out. It really touches a nerve with them because this student loan system is their cash cow in one way or another, indirectly, directly. And, you know, it's one thing to say that you're canceling loans by congressional authority because that has to raise $1 trillion, $2 trillion, and that $2 trillion gets paid into the lending system. So, yeah, you know, the swamp people are probably okay with that sort of an architecture because they know that at the end of the day, they're going to get paid. And they know that at the end of the day, really, they don't actually have to really cancel any loans. They can cancel a few loans, and they can trot those few loans that they cancel, like for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, for example. They can trot those few success stories out there, but the fact of the matter is that almost nobody will actually get their loans canceled. Like with public service, 99% of all borrowers are getting disqualified out of the program. So, yeah, the swamp is maybe a little concerned about cancellation by legislation, by Congress. But cancellation by executive order, oh my God, it's raining cats and dogs. Dogs and cats living together when you start talking about canceling loans by executive order. Because nobody gets paid. Nobody in Washington, D.C. will get paid when the president cancels loans by executive order unilaterally. That doesn't require any tax money. So you don't have to raise a new pot of wealth and then give that wealth to the lending system to cancel loans. And the swamp just can't stand that. That like threatens their existence. And so over the past 2-3 weeks, as canceling student loans by executive order has really gained steam in the media, in policy circles, and especially since Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren have thrown out that exact concept, although their proposal frankly sucks. All the bad guys are sharpening their knives, ladies and gentlemen. They are coming after us. So this week, if you Google student loans, you'll probably see, 8, 9, 10, 11 maybe even 12 stories from various players, all connected to the swamp in one way or another, saying, whoa, student loan cancellation is unfair. It's not fair to those people who already paid. Or some of the pieces I'm seeing say that the president does not have the authority to cancel loans by executive order. So we are seeing all kinds of hit pieces against us. And tonight I want to talk a little bit about why they are all completely full of shit. Pardon my French. So the first bunch of, let me take the last example first. There are a number of people, particularly in a CNBC article that came out a couple days ago. There are a lot of experts out there who claim that no, the president actually cannot cancel student loans by executive order. And the way their argument is a little hard to understand, but basically they say that the Higher Education Act, although it gives the secretary and thus the president broad authority to waive, compromise, release, in other words, cancel student loans, they go, oh no, but see, even still, Congress needs to pass a law that gives the president the authority to do that. Oh, and oh, by the way, it can't cost any money. So, that argument is simply not credible. And here's why. The Higher Education Act, in fact, even before the Higher Education Act, the original founding language for what was then known as the Education Commission and the Commissioner of Education. I think it was the Department of Education and Health, actually. Anyways, 1958, the original law was 1965 Higher Education Act, grandfathered in the language. That language very clearly gives the Secretary of Education broad authority to compromise, waive, release, otherwise cancel student loans. In fact, really, if you read the letter of the law, the secretary can even do it without approval of the president, although as a practical matter, that would have to happen. So basically what the other guys are saying are that, yes, that authority does exist, but because if you look at, say, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, that's a cancellation program. That required legislation to make happen. And even the less well-known compromise and authority process, whereby, and many people don't know about this, but the Education Department has been canceling loans going back decades. And they've been pointing to this thing called offer and compromise, which is something where, and the criteria I think has changed a little bit over the years, but there is statute saying if the secretary wants to use this offer and compromise process, they should cancel no less than X amount of this, X amount of that. So the defenders, in fact, the swamp people that are saying that the president doesn't have the authority to do that, point to those two programs and probably to the income-based payment programs, other cancellation programs, and point to the fact that there is congressionally passed statute that serves as the basis for those cancellation programs. They use that as evidence that the president and the secretary cannot unilaterally do this without the legislated consent of Congress. And folks, I am here to tell you that that is just bullshit. And, you know, I was having a conversation with Mark Kantrowitz earlier today, and while I have some respect for Mark, and Mark is usually right about most everything when it comes to student loans, he is wrong on this point. He just is. The last email I got from him, he was like, well, why did Congress have to pass legislation to enact the public service loan forgiveness program if the secretary just could have done it the whole time all along? And the answer to that question is very simple. For years and years and years, the Department of Education has abandoned all pretense of wanting to serve the interests of the borrowers. We have seen, and I have dozens of examples, where the Department of Education has acted in a way to screw the borrowers. That is just kind of how they roll. It's always been true. It's true today. It will be true tomorrow after Trump leaves office, which apparently it looks like he's going to do now. But that's just kind of how it goes. So why does Congress have to pass legislation that forces the Department of Education to cancel loans? Because left to their own devices, the Department of Education would just never do that. The corporate culture of the Department of Education is one that serves the institution first. I would say the lending companies and the colleges second, and the actual citizens who are supposed to be helped by these loans last, dead last. So why does Congress have to pass legislation that creates forgiveness programs? Because they want to see forgiveness. And the only way most of the time to make forgiveness happen is by passing legislation and forcing the Department of Education to cancel loans. And even still, the Department of Education almost never actually cancels loans. So that is why Congress has to pass legislation for loan cancellation. But that in itself does not at all preclude or somehow mitigate or delete the president's foundationally mandated, congressionally blessed power to unilaterally cancel, waive, compromise, release their interests in student loans. It just doesn't. And I'm not the only guy saying that, by the way. There are many other groups who've done a bang-up job in doing this. Now, another thing that a guy like Mark Kantrowitz will say is that, no, the president can't cancel loans unilaterally because he might one day all of a sudden just cancel loans for, say, white people, or cancel loans for, you know, red-haired people, or in some discriminatory way. Well, I am here to tell you that there is absolutely nothing at all discriminatory about canceling all federal student loans. In fact, because you're canceling all loans, that is, on its face, not discriminatory. In fact, that is whatever the opposite of discriminatory is. Like, that's de facto not discriminatory. So the people claiming that the president doesn't have this power are just completely wrong, and they will be proven wrong in any lawsuit that might arise. And so that's a very important point that all of us should understand, and hopefully at least some of us will be able to make in the public square, as all of us going forward are going to have to defend this concept of canceling student loans. Now, the next bunch of haters, and these are sort of the knee-jerk, name brand, typically conservatives, at least up to this point, who are saying that, oh no, canceling student loans isn't fair. It's not fair. It's not fair to the taxpayer. It's not fair to the people who already paid their loans. It's not fair to people who didn't qualify for loans and had to pay full book value. Fair, fair, fair. Canceling student loans is not fair. First of all, you want to talk about fair? Is it fair that we just threw out and are going to throw out $1 trillion in the form of loans that don't need to be repaid to small business owners across the country, some of whom may have been hurt by the pandemic, but many of whom, by and large, may not have been? Is it fair to those successful businesses that they were thrown this free money by the government? Is that fair to the small businesses who didn't apply or maybe for whatever reason didn't qualify for the loans? Is that fair? Now, we're in this pandemic. Let's talk a little bit more about fairness. Was it fair that 43,000 millionaires and billionaires got a pandemic stimulus of $1.7 million apiece on average? 43,000 millionaires and billionaires, $1.6 million apiece, without even asking for it, by the way. Is that fair? Is that fair? Was that fair to the taxpayer? Is it fair to the taxpayer that all that stuff I just said adds to the national debt? Yeah, let's talk about student loan cancellation. That doesn't add one dime to the national debt. It doesn't cost the taxpayers one additional penny. The taxpayers paid for these loans many years ago, and they didn't pay much, by the way. Of that $1.6 trillion, the amount of unpaid original principal of that is certainly less than $400 billion. And the government has been making a profit on these loans for decades. So the taxpayer is in no trouble. And if it was, I don't know about fair, but if it was legal and it was acceptable to cancel, to make all these PPP loans, to give out all these tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires, then don't tell me about fair for canceling loans. Is it fair that bankruptcy protections were taken away from these loans decades ago when they exist for every other type of loan? Is it fair that the statutes of limitations have been taken away from student loans uniquely? Fuck no. You want to talk about fair? Yeah, let's talk about fair. Is it fair to conquer and enslave the best and brightest in this country just because they went to college and they didn't have enough money to pay for it, and that they were compelled to take out these unconstitutionally predatory loans? Is that fair? Yeah, don't fucking tell me about fair. That's ridiculous. And one more comment on these knee-jerk, conservative idiots, useful idiots I would call them. As they wag their fingers at us, all they are accomplishing is the perpetuation of the worst big government lending monstrosity that this nation has ever seen before in the history of this country. These so-called conservatives, by wagging their fingers at us, are supporting and defending the very same colleges that suck $100 billion a year in funding out of this lending system. Now, you might like the colleges, you might hate the colleges, but the conservative douchebags that are wagging their fingers at us, they claim to hate the colleges. Yet here they are, defending and perpetuating this big government lending system in spite of, and thus helping the very colleges that they claim to despise, the colleges that are indoctrinating our youth with communist values and all that stuff that they say. Whatever your thoughts and feelings there are, really doesn't matter. What matters is these knee-jerk, retard, fake conservatives are defending and perpetuating the exact thing that they claim to despise. They are petty people, but you know, I give them a little more credit for that. Frankly, I would say that they are in the tank with the lending swamp. They are doing the bidding of their master. And their master is either the swamp, meaning the unelected bureaucrats, lobbyists, lawyers, Washington, D.C. people who have been sucking their living out of this predatory lending system for many years, Or maybe they're even doing the bidding of Wall Street. Because like I said at the top of this broadcast, make no mistake, the people on Wall Street and many conservatives within the Department of Education and around the Department of Education, they would love to have a fire sale. And they would love to sell this entire federal student loan portfolio out to Wall Street investors for pennies on the dollar. They would love to do that. And the people on Wall Street would love to pay pennies on the dollar in order to buy these loans. So that instead of the government wrecking our lives, it would be Wall Street wrecking our lives and forcing us to be conquered and enslaved under this predatory, unconstitutional lending system. So these conservatives that are wagging their fingers at us, I hope that you will come after them. This is your fight. These are your loans. And these people are assaulting you and your livelihood when they do this. You should take that very seriously. Because if you don't fight, nobody's going to. I'm gonna. I do everything that I can do every time I see a shitty article. But, I'm only one guy, and I've only got so many sets of hands. And so you have got to step up, and everybody watching this has got to respond as individuals to these oppositional articles that are being seeded in the media right now against us. Now, so that's the third type of oppositional article that is coming out. So let's recap. Number one, the president can't cancel loans. Number two, it's not fair. Number three, we're seeing new articles come out about this as we speak. This is another thing that Mark Kantrowitz is doing. Sorry, Mark, but you're a swamp person by these positions, buddy. So I have to put you in that box of deplorables. Got to put you in that basket. But people like Mark Kantrowitz are saying, oh no, it actually wouldn't stimulate the economy. And I've read any number of nonsense pieces about this. What I've heard people say is, oh, most people with student loans are doing fine. And if you canceled all the loans, they would just take that money and put it into savings. They wouldn't spend it on the economy. That's complete bullshit. Again, very easily provable bullshit. Most people with student loans are not doing fine. 80% of all student loan borrowers, 80%, were either unable to pay or they were paying, but their balances were going up before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, the class of 2004, 40% of that class is defaulting on their loans. 40%. Now that class only borrowed a third of what's being borrowed today. So my best guess is that everybody walking around with student loans today, 70, maybe 75, maybe even more percent of all borrowers, 3/4 of all borrowers, are headed for default. That's not doing fine. It's just not. And no matter what sort of bullshit data you can point to, the two pieces of data that I just mentioned are impossible to explain away. There's no way that this data massaging evil nerds out there who are trying to thwart us, trying to conquer and enslave us, there's nothing they can do or say to make those two things I just said untrue. This is a failed lending system. When the only things that you can say about most borrowers is that most borrowers are completely fucked on these student loans. They are not doing fine. These loans are ruining most of their lives. And remember, those two data points I just said, that was before this pandemic, before. So if this lending system was completely toast before the pandemic, what do you think it is now? It's beyond toast. This is a catastrophically failed lending system by all metrics and measures. So folks, I've gone on 10 minutes longer than I should have, but I've given you the three arguments being lobbied against us. I've given you everything you need to shut those ridiculous arguments down in their tracks. It's not hard. It's easy. The last thing I will say is I know it's hard to debate this topic if you don't know exactly what to say. I know it's just a complicated topic. That's where we come in. The best thing that anybody can be doing right now is two things. Number one, growing our petition. We're getting close to 1 million signatures. Do everything you can to grow that petition. I'm not going to tell you the laundry list of ways to make that happen. You're a smart person. You can think of ways to grow that petition on your own. Be smart, be clever. Number two, getting us on the media so that we can go toe-to-toe with our opposition is incredibly important right now. Last week we were featured in Newsweek. Over the weekend we were on a local news station in Virginia. We did an interview with Business Insider on Saturday or Sunday, and hopefully that piece is maybe even published already. I don't know. We are ready to do interviews with the media, folks, and we are ready to do battle. We've been sharpening this knife to a razor's edge over the past 16 years now. But you know, I can call reporters all day long and say, hey, you should really interview me because I know what I'm talking about. And they'll be like, yeah, right. Ain't going to happen. It doesn't work that way. The way it works is when you sitting there, contact a reporter or a news organization and say, hey, you should really interview this group about this petition. Change.org/cancel student loans. You should really do a story on this. You know, by and large, we don't get interviewed but for third-party referrals. It is only when people like you contact the media and say, hey, this group's really got something going. They've got this petition going. It's been going on since March. They were the first group to publicly make a splash up in the media about loan cancellation by executive order. They really know what they're doing, million signatures, blah, blah, blah. You should really interview these guys. When you do that, the odds of that media company actually doing a story go up dramatically. And, you know, I can sit here live on Facebook every day of the week, and who knows, maybe 500 people will watch, maybe 1,000 people will watch this broadcast on Facebook or YouTube. But that's not the media, folks. That's a very small ripple in a very small pond. Getting on the actual media is far better for us. So come on, dudes, own this problem. This is sink or swim time. We will be overwhelmed and crushed by our opposition if we remain silent. And that is just the fact of the matter. So don't let that happen. If ever you were going to get off your ass and actually help us spread the word about the petition, and perhaps more importantly right now, getting us in the media so that we can answer these just ridiculous jelly-brained or worse critics, now is the time. Okay, folks, I'm going to leave it there at that. What else can I say? Good luck, Godspeed, and God bless.